So we got I popped the new U-joint in. What you want to see is it move nice and free like this. If you want to know how to put a U-joint in, I've got other videos showing how to put drive shafts and U-joints in. We're just going to keep moving on here to the rotor and the hub assembly. There's a race and a bearing and a seal we're going to replace, and it's just a matter of using a punch to knock them out and pop them back in again. We're going to take all these bolts out, there's 8 of them I think, and put a new rotor on. We're going to Loctite those in. Another bearing in the front here that we're going to replace. I'll show you guys how to pack those bearings. And then we're also going to replace this needle bearing in our actual spindle. You can see it's as dry as can be. Replace this seal, and that keeps the drive shaft from wobbling. That one's kind of tricky to get out. I made a tool like this, just bent it and put a sharp tip on the end, and it's able to go around the corner through the long side and grab that bearing and then push it out. So a straight punch won't do it, but I just made this real quick with torches and a grinder. Okay, we're gonna put our hub together. Put the new races in already. It's handy to install a race if you, it's hard because it's tapered is always out, so you only have this little lip to sit on. But I usually take the old race and turn it upside down. Now I got this bigger surface. And if you can find a plate or a socket or something that just grabs the edges, one solid hit in the middle really helps to seat those races. So for our bearings, these are grease bearings. So you can see the old one here. This is it's like almost like a mud, like a slime, but the grease is still in there. This grease probably lost most of its lubricity. And you can see through. I didn't wash it out or anything, but you can see the light through the rollers there. So that's pretty well junk. So what we do with a new bearing is we have to pack it full of grease. Now you can get bearing packers, I guess, I don't know. But we were taught in school, I find it's a lot of waste because when you're pumping it full of grease, this whole center section has to fill it with grease first. So we were taught to just put some grease in our hand and just take the bearing and just squeeze it in that open end. And go all the way around until you start seeing the grease squeeze out the other end. You see that? So now that's packed right full. Let me just turn it a little bit and keep going. So this is all the grease I have left in my hand, and I can take that and put that nicely around the outside, and I've got a fully greased bearing. Drop her in, and we are golden. Okay, we'll pop our seal in. There's 2 sides to seal. One side has a little open lip, the other side does not. So the point is that the grease is supposed to get in behind there and push tighter on the seal, or oil, whatever it is. So we want to keep the grease in. Grabbing a nice big plate that goes all the way around, some weight to it, helps pop it in. A big punch. Perfect. And that's it for our hub. We'll put the other bearing in when we're ready to put the hub on. We are going to put our rotor on. I'm going to wash the rotor with soapy water before you put the brakes on. That's just, there's a little coating of oil on there. Keeps it from rusting in the package. And we got new bolts. And we're going to put some Loctite on them and drop them in, and then torque the snot out of them. I think it's green or red. I don't know if it even calls for Loctite, and I like putting Loctite on. I ordered new bolts because the hardware store didn't have them. I forgot to tell them to use grade 8. It was grade 5 that was in there, and that lasted many a year, so I should be fine with grade 5. I know it will be fine with grade 5. And if he's able to break that hard to snap 8 9/16 bolts, I think he's got other issues. Still like to take a big Johnson bar and torque them some more, but camera's in the way, so here we go. For the needle bearing in the hub itself, make sure it's nicely greased. Pop it in. You can use the old one again as a perfect guide to put it in, because you need to drop it 1/4 inch down below the surface to allow for the seal. And then just put a plate on top and use a press. Try not to use a hammer because you pinch the outsides of the housing, and then the rollers don't roll very good. If you do, you have to stick your finger in there and make sure you're able to turn the rollers when you're done. Just be careful, but I'm gonna head over to the press. Alright, I'm gonna just take vice grips and grab that second needle bearing out, pop the seal in, and away we go. Polished up the shaft. We're gonna put a little bit of Vaseline on it and the seal so that the seal slides on there really nicely. Slide this on through, be careful of the seal on the inside there. And then we can pop our little tapered cap back in the top here. We're gonna pop this bottom cap back in again. The bearing is in there. We pulled that out. We packed that full too and put a new seal on the bottom of it. And doesn't ever really go any farther. The bearing usually doesn't need to be replaced because all it ever does is move that much. This cap was a pain to get out. I'm just gonna put a little bit of Never-Seez on there and pop it in the bottom. That goes in a little nicer. I'm just gonna put a couple bolts in there. I'm gonna use 2 for the top. Unfortunately, I don't have my Teflon piece yet. I'm showing up this afternoon, so I'll go as far as I can. Might put the old one back in again, but I'll show you what that is. This is that little Teflon cap, and you can see that it is off center, and there's supposed to be a little rib right here that sits in the top of the hub housing, and then as you turn, it actually tips the camber, so you get the proper camber as you're making a corner. So that's why it's off center. This one's no good. We'll send it for an alignment after to make sure that everything's okay. Usually you'd have to set your preload on it, and sometimes they do that with shims. The tractors do anyway. But this system actually has a giant spring in there, and that'll always set your proper preload. So if that Teflon wears at all, the spring should make up for that. There's a gasket in between, but we'll tighten up the bottom, put that new Teflon piece in the top, tighten her up. And then I buffed it off, so we're gonna put a little bit of paint on there. When he painted the frame, I guess he stopped here, so I'll finish it off for him, make it look all pretty and new. And then we'll get ready to put our actual hub assembly back on. So here we go. Okay, got some paint on there, got the cap in there, but I'm not gonna tighten anything, it should stay put. So I'm gonna put the rotor on. Just put a little bit where that bearing rides and where the seal rides, just to help it out a little bit. Another bearing will help. This outer bearing's packed nice and tight. Now there's a hollow spot in the middle. There really is no point to filling that with grease unless you have a grease nipple on the outside. Trailers and that, you'll see that, where you can force the grease through the bearing and then come out. When you're going down the road, there's no way that the grease from the center here will hit those 2 outside bearings. So it is kind of pointless. And like I showed you that bearing before that was all covered in mud there, looked like. The grease stays in the bearing. You just got to make sure that your bearings are packed nice and tight. You should never have an issue until it's time to service it again and put new grease in. So save yourself the grease. I'm going to slide that on. It was a bit tight. Might need a little love tap just to vibrate it on. There it is. So bottomed out. Now we can start putting it back together again with our 3 nuts and our nice tool. So we want to start with the one that has the knob on it. The knobby goes out. So when you get to the end, you want to spin it as you tighten it. Bottom the bearing right out, and then back it off quarter turn. You want a nice free roll. You don't want it to drag at all, but you don't want any free play either. Now, the new bearings might wear a little bit, and we'll take a look at it 20,000 K down the road. Now this one, this tab sits in a groove in the threads there, and then we want to line the hole up with one of the pegs. If it doesn't work, you can flip that one around. And make sure that that peg most definitely is in a hole. If you don't, this thing will sit sideways, it will sit cocked, and a big chance for your tire to fall off. Not so good. So take your time and make sure that 100% that peg is through the hole. Tighten my nut just probably about 3 degrees to make it fit. There it is. And now your next nut can go on either way. You want to tighten that as much as you can because that's what keeps this tire from falling off. Wonderful. And clean these up, put some new grease on them. Assembly of this is an exact opposite as the way you took it apart. And away we go. Okay, we're gonna pop our brakes back on. Now is a good time. The last time you touch it, just put some soapy water on a clean rag, cleanish rag, and wipe off the oil that was left on there, all your dirty fingerprints. Need a little bit of easy slide brake lube. Just put that on these knobs where the pad slides in the housing. And the back pad goes in the holder. Put your front pad on the caliper already, like that. And make sure that your flex line is on because you won't be able to get this bolt in afterwards. Just take a little clip, stick it in there. It does fit, even though sometimes it's a little tricky and tighter. And then the new bolt, which keeps it from moving. Got an Allen wrench around here somewhere. And we are golden. Look at that. I finally got me my little Teflon piece, my seal, and my gasket. Very simple, seal goes lip up, goes in the hole first. And then the Teflon piece with the knob fitting in the groove right here. Just gonna put some grease on it. Can't have too much grease. Gotta be 100% certain that it fits in the groove. There it is. Gasket around it. And we're golden. Underneath, new U-bolts with our 2-inch lift. I've got these tapered blocks that angle the differential up a little bit, which helps with my phasing of the drive shaft. I gotta get some measurements and call the drive shaft shop that I use to make me a drive shaft. Don't know whether I'm going with 1-piece or a 2-piece yet. They said that 1-piece would be fine, but I kind of have my doubts. But we'll worry about that later. Now when we're tightening the U-bolts, I tried to get a torque out of my spring guys, but they just said torque the snot out of it. So bring it up nice and even, put a big bar on it and just tighten it. Don't just rely on your impact gun. We're gonna put some new shocks on the back here. So here we go. So we got our new shocks on and the axles underneath. We're gonna take our tires off and look at the brakes, put all new shoes on there, see what the drums are like, get the e-brake working again. And I think these, last time these rims were off was the last time the Jays won the pennant back in '92. So it should come off nice and easy. Not bad. Look at that. They're not even rusty. We'll pull those drums off, see what's living in there. Some paint on that. Let's see what happens. You're gonna replace the brakes, take your bolts out of your axle. This is a full floating axle, same as what would being a transport truck. To get this off, you just bang it, pops right out. Behind that is a little fork that grabs the Teflon and a nut. Now, I'm not a big fan of these. You can see that there. See how the nut tried to back off already and twisted this thing sideways? I like to replace these, and I like to replace the nut. I don't like taking chances with these. I've seen one come out before. When it comes out, you'll be driving and this is the actual axle with the threads on it. This keeps the hub assembly together. When that nut backs off, your whole axle comes out, and your tire, you'll be looking, and your dual will be about 4 feet beside the truck, and it'll just be resting on the axle. Lots of damage, pretty well have to replace the whole diff and assembly, so just do yourself a favor and get a new nut and this little piece here. And it pops right out, but even still, I'm always nervous. So there's the star adjuster to back these brakes off, and it is seized solid. So, see if I can knock that star adjuster out. This drum is pretty well crap because somebody was beating on it before already. So, now you'll have to split the drum and order a new drum for it. Okay, so tried the star wheel, that didn't work. I don't really want to cut the drum, that gets messy. So what I did was, at the back, there's 2 bolts holding the wheel cylinder on, there's another little one on top, and there's 2 little knobs that hold the springs that hold the shoes in place. So I'm hoping I cut the e-brake cable off nice and flush, and I punched that pin out at the top. So what I'm going to try and do is twist it and kind of pull the brake assembly off. So hopefully I have all the guts inside. Yeah, see, it's all loose. I had that room to move, and nice. All right, here we go. I'm taking a look at this. That's rusted so bad. This is a little cable that pulls on the star adjuster, and it's seized solid. This is supposed to move back and forth nice and free. This is seized solid. So I think I'm gonna have to open up the 85 axle and see if some of the parts are the same. All I really need is a star adjuster. The lever I can unseize. It's got a new pin on the new shoe, and then this cable. But if the rest of the stuff is in better shape, like the lever, and it's nice and clean, then I'll use that. This is an Ontario truck, so everything here is pretty well junk. Here we go. So this is the 85 axle, pulled it back from outside again, and it's in much better shape. Even still has some paint on it. So what I'm really after is this little cable here, and it's in good shape. So we're gonna move some parts over, and we'll have a good as new before you know it. Got our backing plate all nice and stripped clean of all the old parts. Wire wheeled it down a bit, put some paint on it. So we're ready to put our wheel cylinder on, our spring kit, wheel seals, the new nut, and new shoes, so everything's gonna be brand new. I'm not gonna show you guys how to do that though. You really should have some experience on brakes before you start. This isn't really a beginner project. And if you're not a beginner, then you should already know how to do it. I'm not going to be responsible for brakes falling off and especially this nut with the axle walking off. What I will tell you guys though is that make sure you take a picture. We have the technology with your phones and cameras. Take a picture of it, take a video of it all the way around so you can make sure that everything is in the right order. And something as simple as a spring backwards or a little clip backwards can do a lot of damage. So we'll show you guys when it's all done, and then we're ready to put the rims and tires back on again, but getting some new boots put on them today, and then we're getting closer. So yeah, here we go. Okay, cleaned up our seal surface, put a new seal in, washed the bearings, inspected them. Ready to try and fit this over top. A bit too big. Shorten our star wheel a bit. Yeah, we can go lots. I'll tighten it until it gets snug and then back it off a little bit. And before I put that outside bearing on, I put a little bit of gear oil in the hub so it's got oil right away. And before I get too carried away, I either drive it on a hill or jack up on one side. And that allows for the oil to go all the way in the hub and then come back out again. Pop our bearing in, put our nut in, set our preload, tighten it, back it off a quarter, lock it, and we are ready to roll. There's a little notch at the opening at the top here. I do not trust that tiny little clip to keep that nut from turning. So I'm gonna hit it with a spot of weld too. And I'm gonna piss off the next guy who has to take it apart. It's probably gonna be me anyway. It's all new under there, so we shouldn't have to touch it for 100,000 K or so, hopefully. So follow a variety of projects that include conversions and repairs to anything from Ferraris to chainsaws. And check out the Tape Boss, my newest invention that's coming to market. And remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich.